Hi, one and all. This is Viv from sunny Brazil. I've decided to talk about a personal experience, what happened to me. And I've decided to talk about it because there are, I'm sure, many women and men who are sitting at home now, struggling, trying to look after their loved one that has suddenly become ill. And if this helps anybody to understand that you're not alone, and if I can share this experience with anyone, and it gives somebody hope or help or whatever. I moved to South America about 6 years ago. My husband and I came here to have a better life, better quality of life. But unfortunately, along the way, he became desperately ill. He was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, and from then on, my life was completely turned upside down. The type of dementia he has gives him Parkinson's disease, or the symptoms of Parkinson's disease, plus the symptoms of dementia, as one would expect. We bought a nice house in Paraguay. We had it renovated. We just got our residency. And I was actually in the process of getting a healthcare plan, a good healthcare plan, when he was suddenly taken ill. He started to act strangely. He started to get aggressive. And I really couldn't understand why. He got continually worse. Became very unpleasant to me, and I just couldn't understand. I knew something was wrong. He actually got shingles, and he got it in the ear, which it went internally. And I thought that was the reason why he was strange and not right. To cut a long story short, he became so bad that I had to leave my home. But I was still concerned about him and was ringing him every day, making sure he was fine, making sure he had food, blah, 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 blah. I was trying to arrange somebody to actually look after him. I did have a neighbour that actually came in and watched him for me. One day I called at a weekend and there was no answer. And I continued to call. There was no answer. I got the feeling something is wrong. So I went with a friend, got the keys for the house, went in and found my husband unconscious. At that time I thought dead. Unconscious, unresponsive, laying across the bed, covered in blood. called an ambulance, got into the hospital. When I arrived, I didn't know whether he was alive or dead. I was immediately faced with doctors who started to ask questions in Spanish, of course, which is not my best language. And he was starting to say, are you the wife? I said, yes, but we're separated, blah, 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 blah. And he said, I don't care. You have to take care of him. He has to have 24-hour care. You are responsible for him. And I said, hey, hang on. I'm not in a position to have a 24-hour nurse all the time, blah, blah, blah. And he says, well, if you don't, you're going to be arrested, and blah, blah, blah. I said, hang on, I don't even know if my husband's alive or dead. I've just arrived at the hospital and you're telling me this? Anyway, there is a law there that if you are married, you have to take responsibility. Okay, I agree. He's sick. But then my life completely stopped because I returned to the house. He was unable to continue looking after himself. He was incontinent. There was no food in the house. I couldn't lift him up, even to drink. I was there for 3 days without food and without help. It was very, very traumatic. The bed was wet. I hadn't a clue how to look after him. I rang a friend and said, please help me. I need to get somebody in to help me. It was awful. I managed to get a nurse, but obviously she couldn't do 24 hours, 7 days a week. So she taught me quite a lot. She taught me how to try and change somebody's bed when it's wet and help put on nappies and how to change when you're alone. But he was so heavy. I struggled. And I realised I had to get more help because she used to go out of the house at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and she wouldn't return until 9 o'clock at night, and this was only 5 nights a week, and the weekends I had to look after him myself. During that time, I never slept at all. I used to sit on the sofa by the side of him in the room, and he would call out, and I would try and do the best I could. Difficult. My family live in Europe. I was very much alone. But I did manage to get this nurse for some relief, some help. So, to cut a long story short, his type of dementia is very difficult to treat. It affects the front lobe, I believe. I'm not technically very or medically very good. And to cut a long story short, they didn't know how to treat this type of dementia, because if you give antipsychotics antipsychotic drugs, which is what controls mood and controls aggression and controls that part of the brain that stops anger and all that lot. You can actually make somebody with Lewy body dementia worse. I was told by a specialist in Asunción, once he was diagnosed, once I managed to get him to go to a doctor, that he had Lewy body dementia and that he mustn't be given antipsychotic drugs because they will actually make him worse. And after this diagnosis, he did become very unpleasant to live with and very difficult. So, to cut a long story short, I couldn't afford now to tend to him, and I couldn't physically get him to a specialist that was 100 kilometres away. I had to try and find a local specialist for dementia, a psychiatrist. This psychiatrist didn't know about Lewy body dementia and continually gave instructions and medication to the nurse that to give him antipsychotic. This changed him into a complete and utter vegetable. He stopped eating, he stopped drinking, everything had to be liquidized. He couldn't swallow. He was just lying in the bed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I couldn't get him up. I could see that he was going to die unless I did something. So I took him to the only place I knew who could help medically, and that was Brazil. So one day, I packed our cases. I arranged to be taken in a big van overnight. And I literally left everything behind, my home, everything, with my husband, and rushed across the border to Brazil and managed to get him into a facility that actually could help him with his dementia. After 4 days, he was walking again, he was talking again, he was feeding himself. So I knew I'd made the right decision. But the devastation to my life, the devastation of realizing that he's never, ever going to come back, the devastation of, and the anger of knowing my life is on hold. The anger I felt, why me? Which I now realise in hindsight that I probably could have done things a little bit differently. And, thought about what we were going to do when we left Europe a little bit better. But by golly, I paid for that, and I'm still paying for that, because here I am now, trying to take care of him in his home. Costs him a lot of money. I've had to rent a small place myself, and my home in Paraguay I'm unable to sell because of the pandemic. But all I can say to you, ladies and gentlemen out there, if you find yourself one day waking up and God forbid your husbands are sick or your wives are sick, that please try and get help. Please try to plan your day so that you can take time out, because I couldn't. The day actually before I left Paraguay to come to Brazil, I ended up in hospital. I had carer burnout. So I'm just making this video and telling you a bit about my personal life so that you carers out there or anybody that finds yourself in a similar position, please try and get help. Try and get rest. Don't try to do it alone, because you can't. Because if you fall over, they fall over. I hope that you guys, or anybody out there who's alone, crying, feeling really sad, your first priority is to get help. To really get help. Unfortunately, in South America, there is no backup system. There is no help. There's no respite. But in most countries, there is. So, I wish you all the best. I wish you love. And anybody can contact me who wants to talk about their situation that they find themselves in. Please, feel free. Bye-bye. God bless. I love you all. Ciao.